What's up, boys? It's Feeds again with another video. Just going in on the big announcement of the 12 new champions. They did a little subtle hint about this the other day with the coming soon announcement, and now they've finally released them. So we'll kind of go through them, talk about some of their stats. I had a little bit of a chance to look at some of them earlier today, and I think they're pretty impressive overall. So we'll jump right into it. So you're going to have Crypt King Brawl. He's a legendary support magic. Is his affinity, and he's part of the Undead Hordes. You have Hegemon, who's legendary, a type attack with the affinity Void. Faction Knights Revenant. Basilisk, rarity epic, type attack. Affinity Force and Faction Lizardmen. Golden Reaper. Support, affinity Void, Knights Revenant. Occult Brawler. Epic HP. Affinity Spirit, Ogre Tribes. The Pitiless one. Wow, I can't talk today. Pitiless one. He's epic, type attack with affinity magic and Knights Revenant. Sikara, epic, who's support, affinity magic and part of the Barbarians. Adjudicator, who's rare with type attack, affinity magic, High Elves. Crimson Slayer, who's attack spirit, Knights Revenant. And then, of course, Harvester, rare attack type, affinity Void, Dark Elves. And then Vanguard, rare defense, void, affinity Void with the Bannerlords. And then Thrasher, uncommon attack spirit, affinity spirit with Ogre Tribes. So we'll look at them real quick. We'll kind of touch on them. We'll talk a little bit about it. We'll hit on the legendaries first. I feel like they're probably some of the cooler ones that have been added. As kind of a side note, it's really cool that they are adding in legendaries, but at the same time too, it is a little disappointing that they're void legendaries. Just because you're going to limit the amount of people that actually get them. And of course, it always goes back to the pay to win kind of style and format when you're looking at stuff like that. Just because of how infrequent you can get them if you don't spend money consistently on the shards themselves. So maybe Plarium has a plan in the future to allow more void shards to come out, but we'll kind of see how that kind of plays out. So jumping into Hegemon, or Hegemon. He's actually a really cool void legendary. The aesthetic value, obviously he's reskinned a little bit, but they've added some stuff to him, some cool shoulder pads with a big sword. The sword animation of Arbiter, and of course they've added a cape to him, so he looks pretty cool overall. With him being a Knights Revenant, obviously it's a little bit different when it comes to it because the other Knights Revenants that you have available are a little bit out there, but he does look pretty cool. Now, the reason why he's so good is actually because of this right here, his Fateful Rival, which is his passive. It always goes first each round. If multiple Hegemons are in battle, the Hegemon with the highest speed will move first, followed by the next highest, and so on. So basically, you can guarantee that no matter what, you're always going to win the speed battle with him in there. Obviously, his base speed, 6-star ascension, is a little low, but overall, he makes up for it in his attack power and, of course, his HP that comes with it. So he's a little bit of a meteor attacker when it comes to it. His A1, where he attacks 2 times at random, each hit has a 35% chance of placing a 30% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns. And then, of course, once you have maxed out, you have another 20% chance. In addition, that's 50% chance of placing a decreased speed debuff. So that's really good for arenas and different areas like that. It's also good for other dungeons and stuff that you can do it into. And then, of course, Numbing Chill Pain, or Numbing Chill, places 50% decreased attack debuff for 2 turns. Also has a 50% chance of placing a block cooldown skills for debuff for 2 turns. And then, of course, you can do another 30% damage when it's maxed out. So this is actually really strong. This guy's definitely going to be tailored for the arenas if and when you get him. He'll fit probably in other areas too. If I had to guess, he might be useful on Clan Boss. Obviously, he's not going to be your first pick, but still gives you a lot of functionality that comes to it. And then, of course, he gets his crit rate aura in all battles by 19%. So he's really strong overall. Probably one of the cooler heroes that have come out as far as legendaries go, at least recently. Golden Reaper, this is another one that's got a pretty cool animation to it. Obviously, they use some of the same stylings of Blood Cords and Ethereal, but still overall really cool looking hero. A part of the Knights Revenant. His A1, he attacks 1 enemy, has a 30% chance of decreasing the cooldown of 1 random ally skill by 1 turn. This is actually really good in a lot of different ways. So if you ran, say, an extra turn build with him and did him full support utility, you could effectively have him attack pretty consistently, long as he's speed with speed substats. and you would have a pretty good opportunity to make him pretty viable and basically buffing someone else out. Now, of course, you have to be able to get it fully maxed out, so you get the 50% chance that comes with it. But overall, it puts you in a really good spot if you decided to make him kind of a support speed hero when you're looking at it. His A2 is actually pretty good too, because it attacks all enemies. It has a 50% chance of placing a 50% decreased attack debuff for 2 turns. It also decreases the turn meter of each target by 20% if they're not under the decreased attack debuff. So gives you a lot of chance to basically reduce cooldown or reduce turn meter and get reduced damage output from the enemy team when it comes to it overall. And then of course places a 30% increased speed buff on all allies for 2 turns and boosts their turn meter by 20%. As you see, this is very similar to your Gorgorabs and your Apothecaries and things like that. So he's very strong. He doesn't get increased crit damage or anything like that, and his attack bar is about 300 less than most of the attack ones you're going to see, mainly because he's a support hero and still has relatively low HP when it comes to it. So good hero. Base stats are kind of wonky, but overall I would use him pretty aggressively if I had the opportunity to. And then of course Pitiless one over here. So Pitiless one's actually pretty straightforward. He attacks one enemy 2 times. His A2 attacks all enemies. Each critical hit will boost the champion's turn meter by 15%. And then of course his Agony Bonds. Each critical hit heals the champion by 15% of the damage inflicted. So effectively you stack crit damage. He's got 60% crit damage at 6-star Ascension. Relatively low speed, so you'd have to put speed in there. But each critical hit boosts the champion's turn meter by 15%. So effectively every 3 turns you can get another turn going on it. So it makes him relatively scary if you run into it. And then of course he gets his crit rate in all battles by 19%. I think they did this with all of the new heroes. They put in the auras and stuff that come with it. So we'll go to the Dark Elves next. I think Dark Elves had one. Yeah. It wasn't Sylar. It was oh gosh, where is she at? Here we go. Harvester. Attacks one enemy 2 times, has a 35% chance of placing a 15% weaken debuff. Has 80% chance of placing a block buffs debuff. And then of course, attacks one enemy has a 90% chance of increasing the cooldown of one of the target skills by 2 turns at random. So, the pretty good thing about this is that this is actually very viable if you're doing something where you want to minimize against buff teams. So very good for Arena. You could use in some dungeons too, like Magic Keep, or if you did Fire Knight or something like that, or a variety of other places where you might run into it. Obviously having the cooldown of target skills is really good for Arena too. And they released a lot of Arena friendly heroes, it looks like in this patch, or in this hero release, which is actually really good, because it gives you a little bit more viability, and especially kind of appeals to some of people's concerns that there isn't enough variety so far when it comes to the things available. So the next hero that you're going to look at is Crypt King Grawl. He's a support legendary. Obviously a little bit of variation of Scaratouche and some of the other heroes out there. Has a cool like little Doctor Strange thing going on with his arm. So his A1 attacks one enemy, has a 60% chance of placing a 50% decreased attack debuff for 2 turns. His A2 attacks 3 times at random, has a 50% chance of placing an HP burn debuff for 2 turns. And then of course his A3 places a freeze debuff on each target for 1 turn if they are under an HP burn debuff. Extends the duration of any HP burn debuffs for 3 turns. This effect cannot be resisted. So effectively every 4 turns, as long as you've got it up, you can extend your HP burn. So it's relatively strong, because if you follow this up, say you do 1 HP burn and then let it get to 1 and then reset, you can have almost 5 turns of HP burns up, which is pretty significant for any boss battle, any clan boss that you get, anything like that. He's got a relatively high HP pool with a decent amount of defense, and he's got a really high base speed, which is actually really good when it comes to it. So this hero would be usable in clan boss. You could use him in any dungeon format. Spider boss being one of them, because a lot of people use Ignatius. Instead, you could use this guy, and so you can get double HP burn going on. And then you can use him in a variety of different arena team builds as well, because of the HP burn and the freeze. He's like a mix of Shinimari and Ignatius, which is actually really strong. And then of course being able to decrease the attack makes you pretty significant. And then his aura is 33% HP in all battles, which makes him really strong when it comes to it. Crypt King would actually be a really good hero to get. I in fact would probably put him prematurely at S tier without even having the opportunity to take a look and see what he can or can't do when it comes to it. So he's a very strong hero when it comes to it. So Demon Spawn, you have nothing new there. Nothing new there. Orcs, they didn't come out anything new with Orcs, because we got Orcs in the last content update. Skinwalkers, nothing, right? And then it was Ogren, I think. Lizardmen, we got some new stuff. So Lizardmen actually got this guy. This guy's going to be incredibly overpowered. So Basilisk, he's like a Jurong, but better. So his A1 attacks all enemies, place 25% increased attack buff on this champion for 2 turns. If this attack is critical, so of course you run a crit set with him, make it very viable. Now this is the best part. So it's a 3-turn cooldown once it's maxed out. Attacks one enemy, places a stun debuff for 1 turn. Damage is based on attack. It doesn't give you a percentage, which means that unless there's a resist or accuracy side that goes into it, you're guaranteed to stun that person. So effectively, what you can do too is just basically run a crit build with him with speed on it or an ability reset on it, and it puts you in a really good spot. But here's the best part: his 8-turn, technically 6-turn once it's maxed out, revives the champion 30% to 30% HP when killed, places a block damage buff for 1 turn. This is actually incredibly strong in a lot of different areas. More importantly, it'll happen in arena. So this is one of those builds where you can run something where if you ran Attack of the Horde, or you did something specific where you can get him to attack a lot with counterattack and things like that, you're in a good spot to basically get a lot of damage output really quickly. His HP pool is really low. His speed's okay. It could be a lot better. And of course, his attack power is relatively high. For this, so Basilisk is going to be a really good hero. I foresee him being an arena killer. He's going to do a lot of damage, and then of course you're gonna gear him for that way. Most importantly, keeping the increased attack buff. And you have to remember, since this is A1, he's always going to be buffing on this champion with the attack buff on it when it comes to it. So it's going to put you in a pretty good spot overall when it comes to it. So very excited about that hero actually. I think there's a lot of potential for him, especially once you get him unlocked when it comes to it. And then of course you've got the Occult Brawler. So Occult Brawler looks pretty cool. Hooded Ogren, as you can see, with skulls on his belt, big ol' chopper axe right there, with all the scars and the tattoos and whatnot, which makes it look pretty cool. So attacks one enemy, has 50% chance of placing a 5% poison debuff for 2 turns. So of course his A1's pretty cool. You get a 60% chance to do the poison once it's fully maxed out. That's really good. And of course this is A1, so on counterattack teams he's very good. He'll be good for clan boss. He'll be good for any or high level dungeons that require you a little bit of damage. Good for fire knights, so on and so forth. And then of course Curse Eater. So attacks one enemy. If this champion is under 1 or more debuffs, this attack ignores 30% of the enemy defense. So good if you're doing a debuff build. If this champion is under 2 or more debuffs, enemies killed by the skill cannot be revived. If this champion is under 3 or more debuffs, this attack is always critical. If this champion is under 4 or more debuffs, this champion heals by 30% of the damage inflicted. If this champion is under 5 or more debuffs, grants an extra turn, removes all debuffs from this champion after the attacks. So this is really good for Spider, which makes it really good when it comes to it. And then of course his passive, Ruination, places a 2.5% poison debuff on this champion for 4 turns at the start of each turn. Has a 70% chance of placing a 5% poison debuff on a random enemy for 4 turns at the start of each turn. So what you'd want to run with this guy is either a high-speed Apothecary or run Immortal with Lifesteal, and then effectively just recycle out it. So he's going to be really dirty for clan boss, provided you can keep him alive. He's going to be really good for arena too if you can keep him alive, because effectively once you get to the 5 turns, or if you get that far, you end up putting yourself in a really good spot with it. He has a relatively high HP pool, which is good. Speed's okay, and then of course crit rate and crit damage are moderately okay too. He has a relatively high resist, so I don't know if his resist will actually work against his own spells, but it is kind of funny that I mentioned this in earlier videos, how I talked about how I wanted something like this, and they end up allowing you to have something specifically like this. So I feel like Playroom does listen to us quite a bit and watches a lot of our content videos when we talk about stuff like that. So Thrasher is one of the other ones. He's an Ogren tribe. It's very simple, decent HP pool. Really low speed, so he's not very good. Not someone I would probably use or gear up for anything in particular. Attacks one enemy based on attack, and then of course his A2 attacks one enemy, has 15% chance of placing block buffs, debuff for 2 turns. So single target, probably wouldn't use him for much, but looks like a normal Ogren. Pretty cool for the most part, but not a hero that you would ever end up using. Not a uncommon hero that you'd want to buff up or do anything crazy with. Now we're going to talk about the Sikara. So I actually got Sikara today, so I'm excited to try her out. As you can see, she looks a lot like Alika, and there's a reason for that. So her A1, follow-up volley, attacks one enemy, fills the champion's turn meter by 25% if this attack is critical. So of course, Crypt build will be relatively important for her, or running with a Crypt team. Aura Puncture attacks all enemies 3 times. Each hit has a 40% chance of removing 1 random buff from the target, which is really good for arena and things of that nature. And then of course, her A3, Enfeebling Tips, attack all enemies, has a 60% chance of placing a 25% weaken debuff for 2 turns. Of course, you can get it down to 4 turns when it's fully maxed out. And then of course, the Aura, Devoted Sister revives this champion with 75% HP when killed, only available when Alika is on the same team. And if you guys remember, Alika is right over here. That's Kalia. Oops. Here we go. Alika. So Alika is the one that has 30% chance of placing an extra hit. Ignores 50% of the target's defense if their max HP is higher than the champion's max HP, and then attacks all enemies. Has 30% chance of increasing the cooldowns on all enemy skills. And then of course, Devoted Sister revives for 75% HP. So very cool. It's cool that they added that. Makes it pretty nifty overall. It makes for a pretty good combo because their skill sets, their tool sets when it comes to it. So I'm very excited to see how that kind of plays out. So the Cardinal, I'm not too sold on it. Her A1's good because it puts a 5% poison debuff on for 2 turns, and then of course it gives you a 20% chance when it's fully maxed out. And then, of course, you have your Mending Touch, which is her A2. Heals a target ally by 30% of the max HP. Places a 60% increased defense buff for 2 turns. You can get it down to 3 turns, which is actually pretty good. And then, of course, Redemption revives all dead allies, heals them for 25% of the max HP, and boosts their turn meter to max. This is amazing. This is really good for Arena. This is so good for Arena. Obviously, the cooldown on it's not that great, but the fact that you can revive them and get their abilities up makes it so strong in instances where you have to play against teams that can one-shot you. This is the answer to the one-shot right here. So all those teams that are stacking speed, here comes Cardinal. If you get Cardinal, build her up for your arena. I would probably run, honestly, I'd probably run like pure HP with her with speed substats, just for the simple fact that you want her to survive as long as possible, get the poisons up, and have the ability to revive when it comes to it. And then, of course, the heal is pretty significant as well. Which makes it pretty good. And then, of course, her speed is 104, which makes it relatively high. It's one of the higher speeds on a baseline hero that you can get out there when it comes to it. When it comes to those things, when you're looking at that stuff. And then, of course, last but not least, I think there was a banner lore that we had to look at. The Warcaster. So Warcaster is pretty cool. Attacks one enemy has a 40% chance of stealing 2 random buffs from the target, which is great for counterattack teams. Attacks all enemies, has a 50% chance of placing block buffs debuff for 2 turns with a 3-turn reduction when it's fully leveled up. And then, of course, Invincible Aura places a block damage buff on all allies for 1 turn. You can get that down to 4 turns, which is really good for Arena. It's also good for a lot of other areas too, like dungeons and things of that nature. And makes it very convenient to run with like a counterattack team to it. So if you get Warcaster, he's very viable for a lot of different stuff. His HP pool is relatively high since he's a support hero. And then, of course, his speed's one of the highest ones that you can get. I think 107 is the highest available speeds out there when it comes to that stuff. And then, of course, Vanguard, last but not least, attacks one enemy, places 30% decreased defense debuff for 1 turn if the target's defense is lower than the champion's. Attacks one enemy, places a provoke debuff for 1 turn if the target is under the decreased defense debuff. And then, of course, decreases the duration of all buffs on an attacker when hit. So this is actually a pretty good hero. You can make him viable for a lot of different things. His low HP pool is not something I would say would be super optimal, and his low speeds aren't something that would be super good. But early game, he'd be pretty decent because of the decreased defense and the provoke, allowing you to have the taunt that comes in handy with it. So that'll be it, guys. That was all the new heroes that we covered. I just wanted to touch on all them real quick, give you kind of my thoughts on them. I'm super excited to try and pull some of them if I can. hopefully my monthly shards will kind of be fruitful and provide some of that stuff for you. But if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, or ideas on how you'd potentially build those guys, I'd love to hear about them, because once I get them, I'm going to try out as many builds possible so I can post the best videos for you. Also want to note that all the support we've been getting lately and all the questions, comments, concerns have been awesome, and it really encourages me to keep doing videos, guys. So if you do have anything you want to see in particular, build videos, thought videos, there's also going to be some new content we're going to be talking about in our upcoming video as well. That's going to make raid a little bit more manageable as far as stats and items and stuff like that. So again, that'll be it, guys. I appreciate everyone stopping by. If you like this video, go ahead and hit the like button below. If you liked it enough to follow, go ahead and hit the subscribe button at the top. And you guys stay classy and keep summoning.
Run! It's gonna be a left click. It's gonna be a left click.